Hello, this is Miroslav Kovac from Pantheon Technologies, and today we are going to talk about how we can migrate ODL project to Lighty. It's a fairly straightforward and simple thing to do, so let's get started, shall we? For our example, we are going to use TransportPCE ODL project, which is pretty easy to migrate because it doesn't use any hard OSGI dependencies or anything like that. So first thing we need to do is to start controller to get all the services that we need. Then we need to start RESTconf to create and send requests, and then we need to start netconf southbound for device communication. All of this is already migrated to Lighty, so it's easy to integrate and ready to be used. There are two ways how we can set up configuration for these components. Either we send an argument that will contain JSON configuration file, or we use default configuration. When we have these configuration objects set up, we pass them to startLighty function. In this function, we start and initialize controller, RESTconf, netconf southbound, and we need to do the same thing for TransportPCE. In order to know what other objects do we need in our Lighty TransportPCE object, we need to go to original project. In our original project, we need to go through all the packages and find all the blueprints.xml files. I have already two of them opened. This blueprint contains bean and references. This bean is a class called renderProvider, and it needs following arguments for its constructor. These arguments needs to be referenced, as you can see right over here. Each reference has specific interface that needs to be used. Whenever this class is created, it will call initial method called init, and whenever this class is destroyed, it will call destroy method called close. All of that we can see in this class. It has init method, close method, and constructor containing those three arguments. Now we need to implement this in Lighty project. So let's go ahead and do that. Now we can build our Lighty TransportPCE object using Lighty services that are in the controller, and as you can see in our build method, these are all the needed references from our blueprints that will populate our object. If we look into our object, we can see that we are extending abstract Lighty module, which will allow us to call the start method on the instance of our Lighty object, which calls init procedure, that is the method that we override in our object. In this method, we create and initialize every single bean from blueprint from original project. If there are some young modules that needs to be added into schema context of controller, we do not just add them to a POM.xml file as a dependency, but we also have to create Maven model paths, which is a list of strings, and we have to add that to a model paths, which is then passed to controller configuration. If we use configuration file, it needs to be added explicitly to that JSON file. At the end, we need to add a shutdown hook, which takes care of closing all of the started components, including our Lighty object, which calls shutdown method of extended class, and that will trigger stop procedure method that we override in our Lighty object and calls destroy method on each bean from original ODL project. Now to show you that it all works, first I'm going to start the integration test, and this will basically start up our main method with default configuration and the HTTP client. Then it sends the request to check if RESTconf northbound interface is responding. At the end, it calls shutdown to make sure it will close everything with no problems. Now let's try to test it manually. So we start TransportPCE application. Let's wait until it loads. It initialized all the desired objects, and now we can try to run the same request as in test, expecting 200 response. As you can see, we just received it. Thank you for your attention.